was clamped
Yeah.
earlier in the play.
I mean, look at that.
Like, what can she do there?
She literally can do nothing.
The Indiana Fever just went through the most rigged game ever. And you can't blame only the refs this time. This time it's also about the worst coaching disaster.
This was an embarrassing performance. How do you lose at home to the Dallas Wings? You lose at home to the Dallas Wings that lost to the gum on the bottom of the shoe, Chicago Sky 3 times. They lost to the Sky 3 times. You lose to the Dallas Wings. Man, stop it, man. Stephanie White is a joke.
The Fever lost 81-80, and it wasn't just about one missed shot. The Fever game lost to the Dallas Wings, probably the weakest team of the WNBA.
I just watched one of the biggest puke fest I've ever seen in my entire life.
This game was packed with clear double standards from the refs, physicality at its peak, and the worst officiating moments you have ever seen. But here's the twist. It wasn't just the refs. Stephanie White, who, after the game, called out the officials for their double standards, but somehow missed her own grave mistakes.
1-3 run at home by the opposing team on you when the opposing team is the Dallas Wings and they're not any good.
And let me tell you this all has become a sequence now, and it is absolutely concerning. If you think the corrupt refs and Stephanie White both crumbled the Fever game, write "We are done" in the comments below. So what really happened in this game? Let's get into it. All right, the recent Wings versus Fever game. 81-80 final score. But let's be real. This wasn't just a 1-point loss. Nah, this was a clinic on how to win a game without actually playing better basketball. And the MVPs? The 3 people wearing stripes.
Guys, today, it's bad enough when you have the referees being so incompetent, so inconsistent, clearly calling things one way for a certain player and calling it another way for another player.
From the very start, that whistle was picky. And by picky, I mean, it apparently had a favorite team. Paige Bueckers, who often received superior whistle treatment, shoves off to get space? Play on. Sophie Cunningham so much as breathes near her? And they call it foul. Now, here's the one that still makes my brain hurt. Late in the fourth, Fever's closing the gap, crowds into it. Momentum's swinging. Bueckers clearly extends her arm, full-on push to create separation. That's an offensive foul in every basketball rulebook on earth, except apparently the one the refs were using that night. Instead, Cunningham gets called. It's a possession and momentum swing, gift-wrapped for Dallas.
You can just see right here, Sophie and Paige. Sophie has her arms out. Sophie doesn't have her arms on Paige, and Paige just shoves her. Paige just shoves her, and it's called as a foul on Sophie. But then this is, in my opinion, one of the most egregious calls I've ever seen in basketball.
These discrepancies sparked visible frustration from players and coaches. Caitlin Clark was seen clapping pointedly at a referee after the game, while head coach Stephanie White openly criticized the inconsistent officiating. According to critics and fans, these calls disrupted the Fever's momentum and played a significant role in their narrow 81-80 loss. Indiana fought all the way back from 17 down, went on a huge 19-3 run, and still came up 1 point short. And when you watch it back, it's not a mystery why. Every time the Fever started heating up, the game got interrupted because this court wasn't level. It was tilted. And guess which way? Yeah, straight toward the Wings' bench. But if you thought the refs were the only problem on August 12th, think again. The Fever had another issue, and she was standing right on the sideline. Yes, Stephanie White.
I think she deserves to be a WNBA coach. I think she's a terrible decision maker. She's terrible. She's a negative basketball coach.
Let's start with the ending. The Fever are down by 1. Natasha Howard grabs a rebound, and the clock is ticking. This is where you expect your coach to call a timeout instantly, set up a killer play, and give the team a real shot at the win. Instead, we wait. and wait until there's about 1.7 seconds left. At that point, what are you even drawing up? A miracle? Because that's all you've got time for.
We don't call a timeout at the first case, we don't call a timeout at the second instance, and we don't call a timeout the third time. Instead, we wait until the last possible second to call a timeout.
Then there's the player rotations. Lexi Hull, who's been a spark earlier this season, barely sees the court. Meanwhile, players who haven't really gelled with the lineup yet are getting heavy minutes. The result? Less spacing, shaky defense, and a team that looks like it just met in the locker room before tip-off. And the adjustments, or lack of them. The Wings were aggressive all night. The officiating was all over the place. And the Fever's game plan? Pretty much the same from start to finish. In the final quarter, when urgency was everything, the offense felt slow and predictable. Even the timeouts earlier in the game were mistimed. Dallas would go on a run, momentum swinging their way, and instead of stopping the bleeding, White let it play out. By the time the timeout came, the damage was already done. Now, let's be honest. This isn't the first time I've seen White's system fumble around when stars aren't clicking or injured. Caitlin Clark's been sidelined for nearly 20 games this season. That's right, 20. And instead of reshaping the offense around the team's strengths, White often tries to squeeze everyone into the same rigid framework. When your coaching decisions cost you flow in close games, it's not just inefficiency, it's a pattern, and it's costing a team more than it's gaining. And let's not ignore this very game. How are you losing to Wings, a team that dropped their last 5 games in a row? They were struggling against everyone, yet they walked over you? That's not just a loss, that's a wake-up call.
And the opposing team is the Dallas Wings, and they're not any good. I mean, seriously, what just happened during this game?
Now let's talk about the league. The Wnba right now feels like it's running on 2 broken wheels. Bad officiating on one side, and questionable coaching on the other. The August 12th Fever loss to the Wings was just the latest proof. First, the referees. It's not just a one-off bad night. All season long, players, coaches, and fans have been talking about the whistle being selective. In one game, you see a clear foul get ignored, and the next, you see the lightest contact send someone to the line. And when it happens in big matchups, especially involving stars like Caitlin Clark, it feels even worse. Missed calls, phantom fouls, flagrants that apparently only exist in theory. Fans aren't blind. They know when the game doesn't feel fair. Then there's Stephanie White. The late timeouts, the strange rotations, the hesitations to adjust when the other team is clearly getting the better of it. This isn't just about X's and O's. It's about keeping the team in the fight when things start slipping. And too often, those moments slip right through. Put those 2 problems together and you've got the perfect recipe for frustration. The league is trying to grow, trying to pull in new fans, especially with that massive $2.2 billion media deal. But what's the point if people start thinking the games are decided by refs or by coaching mistakes instead of by the players? Fans want to believe in the product. They want to trust that if their team plays well enough, they'll win. Right now, that trust is cracking. And if the WNBA doesn't fix the officiating issues and help coaches like White sharpen up, they risk losing more than just games. They risk losing the momentum they've worked so hard to build. Future of the Fever under White. After the game, Stephanie White had plenty to say about the referees, the double standards, the calls that favored Dallas. And sure, some of that was valid, but here's the thing. She said nothing about herself. Not a word about the late timeout. Not a whisper about the rotation choices, no mention of the slow adjustments. This isn't the first time. White has a habit of standing in front of the microphone and pointing outward instead of inward. It's a pattern, one that makes the losses sting twice as much. Because if the head coach won't even acknowledge her own role, how can the team fix what's broken? Indiana's got talent. Boston, Mitchell, and when she's healthy, Clark. This is a roster that should be building toward playoff runs, not making excuses. But leadership sets the tone. If accountability stops at the locker room door, the culture shifts from "we'll get better" to "it's someone else's fault." That's how promising seasons slip away.
I think she plays puke ball. I think she plays slow. I think she plays boring basketball. I think she often gives players too much of a leash when she shouldn't. Gives players she should give more of a leash to None of it. She doesn't seem to believe in the hot hand. In fact, she seems to do the opposite of the hot hand, where if a player makes a couple of shots, she pulls them.
And let's be honest, with Clark out for weeks, Indiana can't afford to waste any more opportunities. Every game matters. Every mistake counts. Every decision from the bench could swing their future one way or the other. If White keeps ignoring her own missteps, the Fever's future gets cloudy fast. Not because they don't have the players, but because the person steering the ship is too busy blaming the waves to check the compass. And if this continues, Indiana will either have to face the consequences or change the coach. So this recent Fever versus Wings game cleared up a lot of questions. It exposed the refs' double standards. It showed Stephen White's inefficiencies. And it revealed the deeper problems inside the team. The WNBA now has to decide, fix these issues or risk losing the status it's worked so hard for. What do you think? And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update from WNBA World.